back to Labour, third day into their conference. And it's all about John McDonnell, the Shadow Chancellor. Would you trust Labour with the economy, with your money? The Shadow Chancellor, John McDonnell, has said the Labour Party is making detailed plans for government, including strategies for events such as a run on the pound and the withdrawal of capital from the UK by world investors should they get into power. He said the party was drafting legislation so it could hit the deck running if elected. Now, you might admire this pre-planning, or does it make concern about what would happen, what could happen if Labour is successful at the next election? They're talking, John McDonnell is talking about a radical government. Let's talk to Jonathan Davies. Jonathan is an economist and wealth advisor from Hertfordshire. Jonathan, the mere mention of a run on the pound gets everyone a bit jittery.
Well, it should do, because what it means is, for those listeners who don't quite understand it, is the pound falls sharply, which raises our costs of imports. We are, of course, a massive importing nation, which means the cost of living for everyone and businesses would soar. So, of course, people should be jittery if there were a run in the pound. Another one, should I say.
Okay. But isn't this good that John McDonnell is planning for this eventuality?
Well, isn't it intriguing? It's commonly accepted in the investment world that the level of your currency is a representation of how global investors view the health of your economy. So if these guys already believe that if they get into power, that global investors will immediately mark down the UK economy, why don't they then change their policies to where global investors look up and mark up the UK economy? So that to me is crazy. As to whether or not it's a good thing to make plans, of course it's a good thing to make plans. I would just say, though, in my experience and everyone's experience, whatever politicians say before a general election generally is often very different post-election.
No, you're right, but with John McDonnell and Jeremy Corbyn et al., that might be different. That might be why they're planning. I mean, he's talking about a radical government. Again, that sounds quite... You can't say things like that. We're going to have a radical government because the markets don't like it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I remember you and I talked about this when Corbyn was elected or made the leader a year or two back. And I said these guys will be believed by the populace as good guys. And indeed, that was shown this year in the general election. They did better than the polls expected. But, you know, radical government, radical policies means, I can tell you, it means Venezuelan-type policies. It means Soviet Union. It means North Korea. It means communism. It means taking ownership, the state taking ownership of major industries. Well, you know, there is nowhere in history, and your listeners need to get this, there is nowhere in history, anywhere on the planet, where communism has helped the people. So we should be very, very careful about listening to these people with rose-tinted glasses.
They were talking yesterday.
Are dangerous people, as far as I'm concerned.
Jonathan, they were talking yesterday about privatisation and getting rid of PFI, which would cost them
nationalisation.
Nationalisation, of course. Yes, excuse me, but nationalisation, bringing back into public ownership things like water, electricity, and rail services. Well, that might. Some people might say that's a good idea. Take it out of because people are making a lot of money out of what is a state business.
Yeah, the problem is not that years, indeed decades ago now, these industries were privatised. The problem is that they're actually still largely under state control. You look at your electricity and your gas bill and your water bill, actually the state determines the operations in many ways of all of these businesses. What we should have seen was true privatisation, the state getting the heck out of it, letting the companies work for the benefit of the users, the consumers, the business customers, instead of having all these darn regulations telling the businesses what to do. That's what created the problem, not the privatisation.
But the issue we have is in certainly in the last 10 years, the poor have got poorer, Jonathan, and the rich have got much richer.
Yep.
And those people who have suffered and are still suffering might think, do you know what? Run on the pound, radical government, I'm going to back this lot because it can't be any worse than what we've had already.
That's exactly what I'm saying, and they are dangerous people. Give you an example of the regulation I'm talking about. All the green taxes, all the massive wind turbines that we see in the countryside, we, the consumers, we've had to pay for it, even though the majority of us don't want them, can't stand the sight of them, and they produce nothing for the electricity grid, for example. But you're absolutely correct. They're dangerous people. They're highly believable, and they're communists. That is all your listeners need to know. They're communists.
Jonathan, thank you. I tell you, you're not a fan. Jonathan Davis, economist and wealth advisor from Hertfordshire, telling it as it is from his perspective, of course.